Welcome back to another episode of the Zealous Podcast. I'm Rocky Snyder. This week I've got Anthony Renna, who, aside from being a strength coach, is actually the host of the Strength Coach Podcast. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Mike Boyle and he, as well as several others, such as Gray Cook, get together every week and do a podcast all about movement, strength training, and the like. But Anthony's written a book called Be Like the Best. We're going to talk about that, the podcast, and a whole bunch more. Make sure you subscribe to his podcast as well as mine, and we'll get this going right now. But let's get into this. I want to talk about your book, Be Like the Best. I want to talk about the Strength Coach podcast and how you got that started and how it became the success that it is today, because it is kind of like it is one of the go-to strength podcasts around. You guys have built something pretty remarkable, but I'd love to talk about your book first, Be Like the Best. You got 50 interviews with leading experts in the field of fitness, rehab, conditioning, and their life lessons. And you do something at the end of the chapter that's quite unique too. So just tell me a little bit about the book.
Yeah, it's basically 50 interviews with top fitness professionals, like you said, physical therapists, anybody really in the fitness profession. And it's an interview on how they got to where they were, whether that's, the interview is like, what do they do? What did they have? What's their mission? What was their vision? Do they have a morning routine? How do they set goals? Like all these, like roughly the same questions, but obviously everybody has a different answer. And after each interview, I have a be like, that's what I call it. And all it really is an action step or a challenge based on one takeaway from the interview. So, like for example, Mike Boyle, for example, let's just use him. So Mike talks a little bit about how speaking and writing were really a key to his success because it helped him, especially in the early 2000s, it helped him branch out. People got to know what his opinion was, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, I highly recommend everybody really start writing as much as you can and try to get on a speaking circuit. And so so we're going to be like Mike is to start writing whatever it may be right now, because you can even write something on Facebook as a long rant, or you can start a blog or whatever it may be. And then to start to take that and take some of the questions that people might ask you about that into a lecture. So some of the things you think people are responding to, and start lecturing, whether it's at your local YMCA or Elks Club, it doesn't really matter. And it doesn't matter how many people either. If you have 5 people come, that's okay, because you're going to start to work on your presentation, on those presentation skills. So Mike's be like was start writing and start trying to speak. So kind of we put you through a little exercise to do that. So that's really what it was about. It really came about from me having the Strength Coach podcast for so long and having access to these amazing people. And I had sold my gym in 2016, and I started my platform to help trainers get educated or really continue their education. That's the name of it, continuefit.com. So basically what it was me saying, okay, how do what lead magnet am I going to use? So a lead magnet is just something that people can use to get email addresses from. So what am I going to give you to get your email address? And I thought, what do people know me for? They know me for the interviews. And what are some things I don't talk about on the Strength Coach podcast? And really, it would be like success or the business part of it for the most part. We kind of keep it to the X's and O's, although we do have a business segment and we have a speaking segment now. But I said, what can I do to interview? So I picked 5 people that had different backgrounds. And that's how the lead magnet started. I just interviewed them and I thought, well, I should probably transcribe these. These would be good PDFs. And then I thought, wait a minute, this would probably be a pretty good book if I can get 45 more people in. So I emailed 45, former guests, people I thought would be a good mix, and said, hey, I got a book coming out. I didn't have a book coming out. But, I said, I'm gonna, right? So you got to fake it till you make it a little bit. But I knew I would at least, in the very least, self-publish it. And so everybody agreed. And I started the interview process. And once I had all the interviews down and transcribed, I contacted Lori Draper from On Target Publications, and she picked it up right away. She goes, "Oh my God, I love this idea. I'll do it." So that's how the book got started.
Laurie is such a sweetheart. I mean, she's right here. Yeah, I live in the same town Laurie lives in Aptos. And of course, she just, sad news this year, of course, with Dave Draper being Laurie's husband. Dave, Mr. Universe, Mr. California, the guy with the biggest heart. I mean, actually, I have his old squat cage in my studio, and it's a small world kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Laurie's published a whole bunch of books aside from yours. Chuck Wolf's book that just came out last year or the year before. She's got some great books. So tell me, and with Be Like the Best, some of the names aside from Mike that are in the industry that you got some life lessons from. Who are some others that are in the book?
Oh wow, John Berardi, Molly Galbraith, Nick Winkleman, Rachel Cosgrove, Eric Cressy, Brian Bradley, Bill Parisi, Dana Santes, Gray Cook, Jason Ferrugia, Diane Vivas, Dr. Emily Splickle, Mike Ramphone, Darcy Norman, Krista Duran, Sue Falsone, Brett Bartholomew, Craig Ballantyne, Vince Gabriel, Greg Rose, Geraldine Coopersmith, Derek Hansen, Alan Stein, Will Fleming, Alistair McCaw, Frank Nash, Ron McKeefery, Dan John. So it's a pretty good, Don Saladino, Patrick Ward, Luca Hosevar. It was a good mix of people like in the professional ranks and in the college ranks, and then people who own gyms, people who are kind of business coaches as well, like Rick Mayo. Just really an amazing list of people that have accomplished so much. And it just scratches the surface, but these are just people in my network that I felt like these are just amazing people that I think other people should hear from.
That's great. I mean, I'm familiar with so many of those names you just mentioned, almost, I would say 95% of them, because they are great presenters. They're great authors. They're great examples, and they've been leading the charge. So yeah, for the listening audience, definitely this sounds like a surefire kind of way to understand a little bit more and get some direction in your life. So speaking of direction, though, you started the Strength Coach podcast. How long ago now? How many seasons are you in?
Yeah, November was our 14th year. So we're in our 15th year now. So it's kind of like, when I think about it, it's kind of crazy to think how long we've been doing it, number one, how it's evolved, and how the rest of the world has evolved as well. Because back then you had to, you had to put it on your iPod.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You downloaded it from iTunes, put it on your iPod, you listened to it that way. Whether it was in the car, you had the little device through the lighter, the cigarette lighter.
Yeah.
So that, it started out, kind of being first to market is always a good thing. It was really kind of first to market for the strength and conditioning community. There were some fitness ones, but this was specifically for the strength and conditioning and kind of fitness community in terms of training the trainers. Everybody else was at the time was kind of talking to the end user. I strictly said, we're going to talk to the trainers. So yeah, 15 years and 14, we just passed 14 years in November. So.
And so at my dinner table almost every night with the family, we kind of just go over our day, and one person takes a turn at a time, and we have 5 things. There's the best, the worst, the funny, the what the heck, and what we call the bud, like a rosebud that you're looking forward to blooming. So I like posing those questions, and sometimes, and for you, that's what we're going to do. Like, when it comes to the Strength Coach podcast, what's the best part of it? What's the worst part of it? What's something over the course of these years that make you go, what the heck? Something that's funny, that brings a smile to your face when you're thinking about it, and what are you looking forward to?
All right, the best part is really the connections for me. There's 2 parts to this. The connection with people like yourself and all of the people that I just named, being able to have them on the show and really connecting with them, that's been great. And the second part is having so many people, especially in the early days, because again, there wasn't a lot of podcasts out there. People would always come up, which was funny because they didn't know my face, they knew my voice. And so I would be, I always call myself question boy. So I did a lot of continuing education at, perform better, whatever, all of them. And people, I would always ask a question at the seminar, and somebody would say, come up to me afterwards, like, "Hey, you do the podcast for Mike Boyle and for yeah?" I'm like, "Yep, that's me." So, oh, thanks so much, man. You made my commute better, which is kind of funny. Like even if you don't say you made my career better, I made their commute better, right? So like I drive an hour every day, whatever. All getting the impact that it's made on so many trainers and I know then that the butterfly effect of how it that spreads down to their clients or their staff or whatever. And so that's been really cool. The worst part has been probably just until I got an editor a couple of years ago. That was the worst part because I have segments. So there's Mike Boyle's on it and we have a strength coach on it, but then we had a business segment at the time. It was the Cosgroves. Now it's Vince Gabriel. We had athletes performance on and Nick Winkleman and athletes performance really doing the art of coaching and Gray Cook and functional movement doing the functional movement system segment. So I had kind of getting all the logistics behind it and putting it all together. And you got to do an intro and an outro and put it all together. And so that was the worst part. The funny part, I think it's funny because it's not like laugh out loud funny, but it's more an insider funny in terms of being a trainer. If you know who Al Vermeil is, and this happened with a lot of coaches early on. They would say, "And I don't know, what you want to interview me? Like, what do you want to talk about? Like, I don't know if I'm going to be good." I'm like, "You do this every day. Like, this is all you do. You're teaching people. All I'm going to do is ask you about what you're doing every day. Relax." And so that's why early on, especially, I always had to do like 10 minutes of talking to them and just, "Hey, what's going on in your life?" Kind of calm them down a little bit. "Here's what we're going to do today. Here's kind of what the format's going to be, blah, blah, blah." But it just makes me laugh, that part of it. But Al Vermeil, so early on, I had Al Vermeil, like episode 13 or 14. So this is in 2008. And so I'm a little nervous.
Roughly like 10 years after he was with the Bulls and
Yeah.
15 or 20 years since he was with the Super Bowl champ Niners. But
Yeah.
this is Al Vermeil, right?
The legendary Al Vermeil.
Yeah.
He's got 9 championship rings. It's just crazy. And he's such a nice guy, but I'm a little intimidated. I'm I'm doing this. I don't know how this is going to go. So we do the interview on a Saturday, and we're going, and Al will just go and go and go. So I'm like, this is awesome. It was like 50 minutes, let's say. And so it's on a Saturday. So I'm walking the dog. 3 hours later, I get a call. It's Al. I'm like, "Oh man, what's going on? Why is Al calling me?" So I said, "Hey coach, how you doing?" He's like, "Anthony, I'm really sorry, but I just don't feel like I answered your questions. And I want to do it over. I want to do it over." And I'm like, "Al, no." I go, "Coach, it was amazing. Believe me." He's like, "No, no, no. I just feel like I said, all right, how about we do this? How about we do another interview and we'll expand on those things?" And he said, "Okay, that's fine. That's fine." I go, I'll release this and then we'll do another one. And I was just in shock, like at the level of, I don't want to say caring because I know he cares, but he wanted his message to be perfect, right? And he wanted it's never enough with this guy. And if you talk to a lot of people that worked with him or with the Bulls or whatever, they were like, he was bringing guys in the 90s, like he'd keep them there for like 2 days. And he would just pepper them with questions and how you doing this. And I just loved that part about it. So we did 2 parts to the show. It was like
That's
episode
great.
13. And by the way, a couple of years later, he did the same exact thing. "Anthony, I didn't answer the questions right. I don't feel good about it." And oh, blah, 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 blah. And, so we had another 2-part series. So that makes me laugh if if you're on the inside, the level of like that he's up here.
Yeah.
And
Honestly,
nobody,
the exact same thing happened to me. Honestly, with Al. I had him on my show about a year or so ago. Exactly the same thing. He was calling a couple times a day and talking to my wife and just checking in and like, I don't know about this. I'm not sure about that. And what normally is a 45-minute episode, I could have had it go on for about an hour and a half. He just kept on going after we stopped record. And I'm going, oh, I wish I hadn't stopped recording. This is fantastic. He just wanted to keep on chatting. So I totally appreciate that. That's hilarious.
yeah, yeah. So that's 3. What was the 4th one? I
The
know
fourth
there's
one's
one
like,
more.
what the heck? Like, where did that come from? Or I can't believe this is happening, or just
Well,
out of the blue.
yeah, I don't know if it's out of the blue, but really, when for so long I was kind of on autopilot because we were really like I said, the only ones in the game until all the other ones that were coming in were calling me, like Ron McKeefery would call me, or Jimmy Colbasso would be like, hey, I want to start a podcast. Is it okay if we chat? I'm like, absolutely. And they're like, I'm really glad you did this because I was afraid you were going to feel like I'm competition. I'm like, no way, man. We're all different, and let's get the information out there. And but then all of a sudden, it just seemed like, oh my God, everybody has a podcast,
Uh-huh.
and not just everybody in strength and conditioning. I wasn't worried about that so much, but I used to get all different authors, like Daniel Coyle was on the show. Daniel Coyle, who wrote the Talent Code, or Christopher McDougall. I had him before his book got popular on, and Barefoot Running, and it came in, there was, it was so easy to get them. But then right around 14 or 15, and everybody's having a podcast now. And those authors now, or those people outside of the business, because those were some of my favorite interviews for me, like a Daniel Coyle, or like Daniel Coyle didn't even answer any of my emails. I had his like Skype. I was trying to get him through Twitter. Didn't even answer. Didn't even say, hey, no, sorry, I can't do it. So I was like, okay, maybe he read Deep Work, which, that's where he tells you, don't answer your emails because you don't, if the answer is no. But but I couldn't even get in touch with these people anymore. So that was the kind of like, where did this come from? Where and that's made it a lot harder. And it's made maybe the focus to be like, let's keep going deeper, the more, deeper down instead of wider, right? Let's keep helping fitness and strength conditioning professionals to, like, that's why I love that we have a speaking segment on, or that we're going to be starting a velocity based training segment in January. So those are things that
Nice.
for me, it was like, what, how did this happen all of a sudden? It seemed like all of a sudden that everybody had a podcast, and every every sector had a podcast, and that was like, just really blew up. And that, I think it was really because of this, I mean,
Yeah.
you're able to stream pretty easy now, and it made podcasting it's right here. So that was,
Yeah. And then add to that the pandemic of the last 2 years here that just inspired everybody who's sitting at home going, oh, I got to do something different.
yeah,
So
yeah.
your last thing was Bud, but I think you already answered that with VBT, velocity-based training. You're going to be putting that into the podcast. Who's going to be the one that kind of heads that up?
Perch, the company Perch has the device that you put on your rack now. It's not having to put something on the bar or the kettlebell, and so you just put it on the rack. It's gonna, it's gonna film you, and all the info's there. So it's come such a long way from guys putting, the unit on the bar, and then
Yeah.
having to, and there's the learning curve is not there. So I'm excited about them coming on, and increasing, helping the strength and conditioning professional to, do their job a little bit better. Because with like a Mike Boyle, you don't get that, because Mike is, people don't understand when they listen to Mike. They have to understand the lens he's looking through at a 25,000 square foot facility. He's doing mostly group training, big groups coming in. So Mike, in order for technology to be a part of what they're doing, it has to really be really easy to use. And I think this might be a device eventually that he can use, but Mike doesn't really use technology at all. And a lot of the advanced coaches and trainers, they are using them because they have a smaller setting, whether that's in the college or pro setting, and they need that information. So I'm kind of excited about that.
And how did you connect with Mike? Because he's in Massachusetts, you're in New York.
Yeah.
Where is the connection?
The connection was I had just gotten back from Athletes Performance Mentorship, and let me just go back a little bit. I went to a Gray Cook lecture in 2004. I was not in the business yet. I was still in the bar business, and so I went to a Gray Cook lecture because I had gotten certified. I figured, I'm going to get certified for training. It might be a career that is good for me. Somebody who's been in the restaurant and bar business for so long, and I need to be around a lot of people. I like to talk to people, and I'd like to go in that direction. Let me explore it. I got certified. Absolutely fell in love with training and learning about the body and everything and helping people, right? And so I went to a Gray Cook lecture, and before I even had a job in the fitness business, and he said, there's 2 new books coming out that you need to get, or they're out: Core Performance and Functional Training for Sports. I didn't know either one of these guys. I heard about them, but I hadn't really followed them yet. And I got those books, fell in love, decided I'm getting a job, got a job at Equinox, and started doing. The next year I went to the Athletes Performance Mentorship, and I got home, and there was on a forum on the old Sports Specific site, sportspecific.com, which became strengthcoach.com. And it said, hey, Mike Boyle has 2 spots open for the functional strength coach workshop. He's doing a BU. Send an email to Mike with your resume, or, what you do and what your resume, and that you want to go. And he's going to decide, because he wants people that, he didn't want absolute beginners. So I sent him an email. I said, hey, Mike, my name's Anthony. I'd emailed you once before a question about functional training for sports, and love your work. Just got back from AP Mentorship 1. I work at Equinox. I'm a level 3 trainer, blah, blah, blah. He goes, yep, you're in. Come on up. And that's how. So, Mike's the kind of guy who that first time we got there, he was, and I'd gone to perform better in between. So between getting accepted and Mike's workshop was a Perform Better Summit. So we got to hang out there. I was like, hey, Mike, I'm coming to functional strength coach. Oh, yeah. Hey, what's up? And we just kind of hit it off, because I was a little older at the time. I was 37, just getting into the business. So, we kind of hit it off, and then went up to Boston, and, went out to a couple bars, and, and then it just started from there. And he had the site, he had his old michaelboyle.biz forum, and I was on that. I was part of it. And so, that's how it started. And I would always go to any Perform Better stuff or his stuff. I got him I got him to come to my buddy's gym to do a lecture when his second book was out. I introduced him to the Equinox Fitness Training Institute manager, Geraldine Cooper Smith, and she started booking him. And so, that's how Mike and I just started. And then the podcast, led from there. I can tell you about that in a minute.
Do you miss training?
I kept training. I sold the gym,
are you still having clients? Do you have clients right now?
I have one client right now because I moved to Indy, but and I have a couple online that I use the app with from home. Like, so even though I sold the gym, I still had a few clients that I worked with, and I continue to work with them through the Train Heroic app. But so, and I do miss a piece of it. So I miss that kind of, just a couple. I don't miss being there all day. I miss more of like good morning with good people and a couple people, and but I love that part of it.
Yeah. Now, any other books coming up?
Not right now. There was going to be a Be Like the Best gym version, but that was in the works for pre-pandemic. And so I kind of held off on that for right now, because we're still working this out with who's going to be closed and who's gonna give up and who's gonna. So I'm kind of the idea was to wait until we got a little bit out of this water and what was it that, Rock, that got you through the pandemic? How did you get through the pandemic?
Mhm.
How did the gym get through the pandemic? What were some of the things? What are some of the things that you changed? What were some of the things that were good that you changed? What were, did you get the full thing? So that's kind of going to be the direction. Like, how do you open a gym post pandemic? And I'll probably pick about 15 gyms and then get some other interviews from other gym owners. And so that's the direction that I was thinking of going for the next book.
Very cool. I can see Be Like the Best online as well, because there's so much out there in terms of online instruction these days, and it's really, I think, expedited. This pandemic has expedited it quite a bit, and it was
Yeah,
already happening, but boy, it has really pushed it. So interesting.
absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
and so with Strength Coach podcast, I guess, where do you see this heading? Obviously, you mentioned velocity-based training. Is it something that you're going to be kind of handing over to somebody to do some other projects, or are you in it for the long haul?
You know, uh, that's a good question. I think it depends on maybe where Mike is. It's not Mike centric, the podcast. It's only really 20 minutes with Mike, and it's really up to an hour with the strength coach or the doctor or the physical therapist. And then there's the segments. So for me, I feel like we can keep going. I don't really have a time that because again, I love doing it. I have it. I just take the segments and I send it to the editor. So that part is easy. And promoting it is relatively easy as well. Um, so I don't really, I always said I wanted to go to 20 years, right? But where do I see it going? I see it, I try to be flexible. So when the pandemic did hit, what are the needs of the strength and conditioning and fitness professional and gym owner? And so when the pandemic hit, I did a bunch of special episodes with how are you guys navigating? I had people from California, from Canada, from Massachusetts, from Florida on the show to kind of have a good mix of what are you doing? What have you? And then when gyms opened, Georgia and Tennessee opened first. I had Rick Mayo and Drew Massey on to talk about how is it with the new restrictions? And so there's all these things that we try to do to be flexible, to be like, what is the most current? And that's why I don't really batch interviews for the most part. So I don't do like 10 interviews of the strength coach or Mike and then have them for the next 3 months. I want to be as current as possible. So for me, I think there are people out there that need a podcast for specifically what we're doing. And I think there's always going to be a market for it. So I'm okay with that, right? We're always going to have that group of listeners, whatever my listener is, more of the beginner intermediate. It's not the advanced trainer. So we have that, and it's going to be like, what are their needs? So I feel like I can always be flexible because I'm always thinking about what do they need right now from me. That's why I have a business segment. I think even if you don't own a gym, you're still in business, right? The public speaking segment. I love that because we all need to be better public speakers because we're coaching, that's public speaking, right?
Yep.
We're doing Zoom calls, that's public speaking. We're on interviews, that's public speaking. So I love having that. And then anything that can help gym owners, like the velocity based training, or the certified functional strength coach guys, they were on it for a bit. They couldn't really handle the segments. They were having a rough time because they're super busy. They're back now traveling, doing that. So they want to come back on, but I loved what they were doing because they talked about progressions and regressions and coaching. And so it's really, I feel like I could be doing this for at least another 5 years because we've been flexible enough to say, what are you doing right now? What do you
But
need right
you've got an international listening audience, right? This goes beyond the borders of the US and Canada. It's
now?
over in Asia as well as Europe. So how often do you find leaders in those regions of the world to come on? Like whether it's in France or Germany, like Dr. Schleep with fascial fitness, or the Eldoa method in France, or other kind of approaches or considerations, philosophies in the Eastern world, in Asia. Do you expand outward? Uh, is that something that you do?
I haven't done that as much as maybe I should have, but like for example, I feel like with this, I want to stay in not in my lane, but what I feel like my majority of my listeners. You're right. Do we have people in Australia? Absolutely. In Europe, yes. But there are people there like the PC Performance podcast. I don't know what it's called now, but they're a little bit more advanced. They're getting these guys that what's the predominant sport there, right? It's football, soccer. So I feel like for me, that would be going into some uncharted territory. Although like Eldoa, I would do because it's huge here now too, right? Like TPI has adopted it, and a lot of golf fitness professionals have said, "Oh my God, this is amazing," which has gotten into other, other people here. So things like that are happening here. I'm going to take what's happening in this area, in this country, in Canada, and U.S. to say, okay, this is really what's happening here. This is most of my audience. Let me stick with that, because if I then I feel like I'm going too thin. I don't know what's happening in gyms in Europe, in Australia, in roughly the same. I think there's the same principles. Like they can all use velocity-based training. They can all be better public speakers. They're all in business. They can all use, whether Vince is talking about email marketing or calling up your old clients. That has nothing to do with where you are. So I think that message does resonate with them. But some of the things, I would say I didn't really, I haven't really ventured into that.
No, but yeah, I'm sure you do have your thumb on the pulse within the industry. And there are some things like velocity-based training, wearable technology, other things that are starting to become much more mainstream. Are there some other things that are intriguing you, that are just starting to poke their head out of the ground, and you're interested in exploring it?
Yeah, I think understanding, Rock, like let's say 10, 12 years ago, there was a lot of stay in your lane, stay in your lane, stay in your lane. And the lane has really gotten wider in terms of,
Fitness
for
and
example,
rehab, that kind of thing.
yeah, not
Yeah.
only training and rehab, like Charlie Weingroff's ideas behind like you can do this or you can do that, but also some of the nutrition stuff, what precision nutrition did to allow people to at least give behavioral advice. And we all know we should be eating more vegetables and fruit, great, but that's not really what the precision nutrition was about. Plus the technology is there that somebody like me can offer this platform and not really be giving the advice. The advice is really coming from PN. Something like Inside Tracker is intriguing me. I just started with that, where I got my blood work done, locally. They get it off to Inside Tracker. They tell me what the 43 biomarkers are. Then there's an app that tells me, hey, this is what you're deficient in. Which ones do you want to work on? Okay, I picked these. Now gives me a checklist, tells me, hey, did you take your vitamin D today? Did you get your oats and barley? Did you get your aerobic exercise in? Did you get your anaerobic exercise? Whatever it may be, whatever the recommendations for me. To me, that's now saying somebody like me can now get involved with that, because I'm not the one. I'm not giving the blood. I'm not giving the recommendations, but the technology is there. So things like that are helping us widen our lane very easily, to just say, like a car, I don't know how a car runs, but I know how to drive it, right? I love that piece of it. So for me, it's more about where can I find more of that? Where can I find more of like things that are allowing me to drive things like that blood work, and say, hey, you should get this, and and work with your doctor if something comes up, because they don't tell you, they don't give you specific recommendations on certain things based on, hey, this is not really for you to be doing on an app. you need to go talk to your doctor. But to say you need some more vitamin D or you should do this to lower your blood pressure, et cetera, great. Behavioral changes like PN gives you. Those are the things that are intriguing me moving forward to say, what can trainers do like on these apps like Train Heroic, Train Rise, whatever. I prefer Train Heroic, but there's so much information on there. Like they even give you the, hey, how'd you sleep last night? How do you feel? What's your energy? Are you sore? And it's going to give you that little score based on it. So I think these are the things that we used to be like, oh, I don't know HRV, but that's kind of giving you a little bit of a picture with through these apps. So I think those are the things that are intriguing me. I guess like the things that are helping us widen our lane.
I got you. Now, with all your background and the people that you speak with, the question in my head is like looking off into the future with large health clubs. Like obviously the pandemic shut them down tremendously, where several chains went into bankruptcy or just folded entirely. Are we seeing the end of the health club industry, so to speak? I mean, is it just going to continue to shrink, especially with programs like Mirror or any home-based workout programs that are virtual with yoga, strength training, spin classes, and the like? Like, where do you see this industry heading?
Yeah, I think I don't see it ending. Right. I think what happened with the pandemic is it took a lot of the crap out. Right. I mean, there were people that probably shouldn't have been in business as long as they were in business and they were getting away with stuff. Okay. And so when the pandemic hit, A, they weren't prepared. B, they didn't have the culture. Then they tried to build the culture and you're too late. Right. But the people that had great cultures, they survived. They survived the pandemic because people I love going to Rocky, right? They stayed with you because of the culture that you had. So I think I think it cleaned up a lot of the industry. Like even I even have a Lifetime Fitness around here that closed. Now there's two other ones, but when they had three in the kind of the same area, they were like, wait a minute, that one's got to go. So they cleaned. I think a lot of businesses are cleaning up some of the mistakes that they had, and maybe taking out some of the weaker parts, right? But I just don't think, from what I've seen, I go to the Y. The Y is still crowded. I went to LA Fitness for about 2 weeks just to check it out when I was looking for a gym here. It was packed. I mean, packed. So I thought, hey, maybe that's the state I'm in Indiana. I don't know. And the restrictions are less here, right? So I don't see it going out. People say, okay, I think Peloton stock went down the other day, whatever. And somebody was saying, oh, look, I've been doing this for a long time. This is here to stay. Those things are just fads. Well, I don't believe that either. I do think those are great products. I do think people will use them, but I still don't. I think the people that were going to use a Peloton religiously in their own home, they're the people that probably got P90X back in the day, and they're okay with doing the homework, right? Rock, I need to go somewhere. Me
Yeah.
personally, like right now, I can't work from home. I'm at a co-working space. I got to get the hell out of the house. I had to go to see people. I got to go to the Y to see people and to do things. I think that 16%, maybe it's down to 15%. I don't know, but I think there's some people that are still afraid to go back to a gym. Great, but there's the people that needed to do what, like me, that need to go to a gym, that need to be around a lot of other people. I don't think that's going anywhere, but I do think people are, some of these smaller gyms, like the boutique gyms, are tightening up their services. They're offering more. They're becoming more aware of maybe where they didn't need this or they didn't need that from a perspective of spending money. And so I do think that some of the bigger chains will last. Now, are
Gotcha.
they cutting? Absolutely. But I just feel like, I don't think Peloton's going to become the clothes hanger. I really don't. I think, the people that were going to last with Peloton are going to last. They love it. They're going to keep going with it. They were built for staying home. That's just not me. But I do think we're all, the pie is really big. I think that's what we
Yeah.
always forget. The pie is really big. And I think, these are just slices of the pie. And I don't think we're always going to be able to have a little slice of that pie.
I'm glad you use that analogy, because I'm also thinking about the obesity epidemic in our nation, if not globally. But that is the most untouched piece of pie thus far, because for you and me, we're strength coaches, right? We're delving into the athletic population, which each passing year gets smaller and smaller based on the population, comparing it to those that are not athletic. The PE programs in schools are being diminished. There's more technology, and it's easier to do things with less physical activity. There's always going to be those athletes, but the greater numbers are those that are more sedentary, overweight, or obese. And my question to you is, out of all the guests that you've had on your show over the course of 14 or 15 years, does somebody rise to the top? Is there some name, aside from John Berardi, who has done remarkable stuff with precision nutrition and getting that information out there, but is there anybody rising to the top to lead the charge in this battle against obesity?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I just had Mike T. Nelson on, Dr. Mike T. Nelson on, and I think people like what he's doing, talking about like really really science based, but from a practical approach as well, and teaching the trainers that piece of it, and helping us widen our lane. Right, he has the Flex Diet certification where he talks about all these different interventions that we can do, without getting an advanced degree, that we can still do. People like that maybe, but on my show, I'm kind of we are kind of sticking to that, to the
Strength coach.
mostly the
Yeah.
athlete. But yeah, you're right. I don't there's a huge market there. That's my next project, is working with, males in their 50s, through a program, through a membership website. So who, I feel like, the kind of former athlete maybe, or, we're all athletes, but
Are you
we all
ready
feel it.
to, you want to say some words about that, or is it not quite there yet and you're going to hold off?
Yeah, it's going to be for general population. It's going to be somebody who yeah, I can say certainly. I don't need to hold it back. I just feel like when I was looking for something beyond, like, now that I'm here, and I sold my piece of strengthcoach.com and Body by Boyle online over a year ago. And so my next move, what can my next move be? And thinking about it was something like, what do I want to do? Who do I want to affect? I love working, doing like working with trainers. Absolutely. I love it, because I think, again, that butterfly effect. But I also thought, what am I doing every day? I'm going to the gym 2 to 3 times a week. I'm going rucking almost every day. I'm riding my bike a lot, a lot. I changed some of my eating habits, where like I'm intermittent fasting, and I'm working a little bit more on gut health and thinking about that, right? And I made a bunch of changes that weren't drastic. I don't count calories, but also I'm not looking for a six pack. I'm going to be 55, and my goals have changed. I'm not trying to look a certain way. I still want to look good,
Yeah.
but I think I want to look good. I want to feel good. I'm thinking more about immunity, and I still want to have a bourbon a couple nights a week, a couple bourbons, and I think there's a lot of us out there that want that, that aren't, they don't want the dad bod, quote unquote, dad bod, right? But still want to look good, without killing ourselves. We're not going to take our shirts off. We're not shaving our chests. I'm not going to the tanning salon, right? I still want to have a glass of bourbon. I don't want to have to worry about that. I don't want to count calories, but I do still want to go to the gym a couple days a week. I want to lift, have a heavy day. I want to have another day. I want to have like a more of a fun workout circuit day, but I want to be active, getting on the bike, going hiking, going rucking. These are things, getting in the kayak. I want to be active. And I think that's where I'm trying to go. Like, the men in their 50s, and I feel like, hey, look, I'm in my 50s. This is what I do all the time, and I'm at a good weight without going crazy. And I feel like there's a market out there that doesn't want to look at the ad with somebody with their shirt off and be like, I know what it takes. We know, not even strength and conditioning professionals or fitness professionals. We know what it takes. We all know what it takes. And I'm not willing to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not willing to do that, especially now at my age. So I have different goals, different things. So that's where I'm going with that. But I don't think, in my community, or I can't think of anyone that's really leading the charge with that, getting people to do, the general population people.
Sure. All right. Well, we're coming to an end, but I want to bring up your book again, Be Like the Best. Where it's on Amazon, all your local booksellers, right? You've got a Kindle or online ebook edition as well.
Yep.
And if people want more information about you, Strength Coach Podcast, or the book, give us all the information: Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever.
Sure. You can go to continuefit.com is my main site. That's where you can get the book, either on Amazon or on Target. Great. And I just will say one thing about the book. It did come out in 2019, but it's kind of timeless because the be likes are really about habits, different habits, whether that's a morning routine, whether that's about, goal setting, a lot of goal setting in there about your mission and purpose. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And I even did a workbook. So there's a workbook on Amazon where it's just the be likes. It's all 50 be likes. They're kind of in an order that, the first 5 or 6 are, the goal setting and the mission and things that you should think about first. And then the rest you can go anywhere. But it is kind of timeless because these are principles that you can implement at any time. So, but yeah, continuefit.com or belikethebest.com. And that's where you can get the podcast or the book, or you can follow me on Instagram at Ant Renna, which you can, again, just get at that one website, continuefit.com.
And that's a wrap for another episode of the Zealous Podcast. I want to thank Anthony Renna for coming on and talking all about his book and Strength Coach Podcast. Next week, we've got Joey Wolf, formerly a pro ball player with the Toronto Blue Jays organization. Now he's got his sights on conditioning the youth, and especially with youth baseball. Be sure to join us next week and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great week.